It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a five-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Oh, this is gonna be a gas!
Where did you two move from? How long have you been married, and why don't you have children yet?
Our story.
I think what my wife means to say is that we moved from...
Moved from where? Married when? Damn it, why?
Oh, Arthur, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
This is really happening.
Like days of old, lighting the spark of love that fills me.
Am I dead?
No. Why would you think that?
Because you are.
Each day I pray for evening just to be.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
At last at twilight time.
Thank you for tuning in to this review of Disney Plus's and Marvel Studios' WandaVision. I just finished sitting down and watching both episodes that went up onto the service today. And I must say it is quite interesting. First off, I am Mr. Green. Thank you for tuning in to this review and this channel. If you would be so kind to help this little channel grow, give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe. That would be fantastic. And if you happen to be a fan of professional wrestling, you can also find me on the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. There's a lot of content over there, a lot of matches, a lot of interviews, a lot of reviews, so on and so forth. So got a little something for you on both ends. But this is a new one. This is a different channel. This is an add-on, and I'm happy to have gotten a chance to sat down and watched it. So needless to say, if you are listening to this now and you have not seen WandaVision, this does include spoilers. Now, I'm not going to go and do a play-by-play of the entirety of the episode because I'm going to try to keep this relatively brief between the two. But it is going to give away some plot points, so if you are not wanting to hear that, this is your fair warning. Spoilers are ahead. You have been warned. Okay, so here we are with WandaVision, and I don't know how else to describe this other than to say that it is a Marvel Studios program with the trappings of a 1950s fantasy television show, i.e. Bewitched. More specifically, well, Bewitched is exactly what I meant. I was going to say i.e. I Dream of Jeannie, but more specifically Bewitched. It is like their version of that, where the old fantasy sitcom where, oh yeah, we're moving into the neighborhood and we don't want anybody to know that I'm a witch or whatever the case may be. Well, that's kind of the case here, except instead of one person doing it, you're kind of doing it with both. The show picks up just like that. It starts with Wanda and Vision moving into this town, into their new home. This show is shown in complete black and white, and it is like a show within the show. So whereas you and I are watching WandaVision, the sitcom, if you will, exists within that same titled series. And so you have everything that's included in that. You have the laugh track, you have the 1950s attire and appliances and all that good stuff that's kind of laid out within the aesthetic of the program. It oddly enough, like I said, it reminds me very much of Bewitched. But I was gonna say, oddly enough, I just went through a review of the first episode of Bewitched, so it really had a lot of similarities in my view in terms of that. It's as if the writers sat down and like, okay, if we were going to stick these characters in this 1960s, late 50s setting, how would it go? And they kind of applied it to that. And we're talking down to dialogue and everything else. And I'll be honest to say this much: yes, it was entertaining to watch that as a program. But if you're looking for the Marvel magic, what's going on here, you're not really you're going to get it, but most of this episode is exactly what I said it is. It's like a fantasy episode that just happens to star Wanda and Vision. It is the old school sitcom thing where they wake up one day and come downstairs into the kitchen. Oh, hey, there's a heart on the calendar. What could you suppose that mean? And they're both trying to remember what this heart could represent. And they just kind of go on about their way, assuming that the other knows, or as they try to figure it out. Now, I will say this about it: yes, it is a very sitcom-ish, fantasy sitcom-ish show, but there's a underline of mystery that is kind of threaded throughout, but it's very light at this point. It's super light. So I don't want to deter anybody and say that it's not there. It's there, but it's not in your face. That's probably the best way to describe that. So they go through the day and they're trying to figure this thing out. And of course, as any good sitcom works, there has to be some level of miscommunication. Miscommunication is the hallmark of the sitcom universe. Somebody hears one thing and they assume it to be something else. Well, in this case, Wanda is her. Yeah, let's try that again. Wanda meets her neighbor. She meets her neighbor who comes next door. She starts prodding around, and then she's like, "Hey, we're planning for something tonight." And then the neighbor's like, "Oh, well, what is it? Is it a birthday? It's not a holiday. It's not this." And she gets the anniversary, and then Wanda's like, "Yes, it must be that. It's the anniversary." So now, on Wanda's end, she's planning on the anniversary. Meanwhile, at the Vision's job, yes, he has a job in this universe. He is like the perfect employee, and because he can do all these calculations fast. Side note, even in this thing, here's one of those light threads that I was talking about. He asked one of his coworkers, like, "What is exactly that we do here?" And the guy's like, "Well, we calculate stuff." He's like, "Well, what are we calculating for?" So there's that element of, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm here, and I know I have a job, and I know I'm supposed to calculate, but I don't know what the end result or the purpose of this is. So there's that first thread of what's going on, but it's not in a big mystery format yet. But now Vision is introduced to his boss, Mr. Hart, who is like, "Oh, yeah, so are we still on for the night?" So now Vision understands, like, the Hart, and that's on the calendar. It was shorthand for Mr. Hart coming over to have dinner with my family tonight, with me and my wife. So he calls up Wanda, and she goes to, they have a brief conversation, assuming that the other understands what they're talking about. Needless to say, that little miscommunication brings this sitcom trope to a head. The boss comes over expecting to have a meal laid out for him. Wanda is expecting to have a romantic evening. And the comedy ensues. So now she's got to cook a meal on the fly, and this, that, and the other. And Vision's trying to entertain the boss and his wife. And meanwhile, they're trying to hide the fact that Wanda has magical powers and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of running through this a little quickly. So now we're at the dinner table because ultimately, despite what has gone on prior to this, she decides to deliver breakfast for dinner. And they more or less hide it on the idea that, well, she's European. This is kind of what they do. So the four of them sit down at a table. This is the first time that we get any idea of some level of deceptiveness or mystery or intrigue or whatever, because, again, all up until this point, despite the fact that neither one of them have any recollection of basically why they're there, this is the first time where the show takes a bit of a turn. Up until this point, it visually looked like a sitcom. It looked like it was a 1950s or early 60s sitcom. And they tried to maintain that. They maintained that within its look, its dialogue, its dress, whatever. But now they're sitting at the table, they're having dinner. The boss, or not the boss, excuse me, his wife start asking, okay, so where are you guys from? When did y'all get married? And when are y'all having kids? And this, that, and the other. When is your anniversary? They're just asking questions that aren't uncommon, although they do come in rapid succession. Like, this is boom, 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 one after the other. And neither one of them are able to answer. See, there's confusion, there's puzzlement on their faces. Like, well, yeah, we got married and our anniversary is, and now the boss is going into like, almost like he's agitated. Like, these are simple questions. Why can't you answer? What's the problem? Why? And he's eating and he begins to choke. The look of the show changes immediately. It starts to get a little, just a hint darker. The angles change. It looks a little bit more foreboding. And even though the wife does not break the question, she's like, stop it. Because, in sitcom world, when she starts starting the stop it thing, it's like she's expecting him to be playing a joke or something like that. But that gets progressively more disturbing. I'll say that, because the smile doesn't go away. She's still kind of, oh, stop it. That's all she said. Not any real major panic, but there's kind of like a little hint of it on her face. And by the way, the wife here is the same mother that was on that 70s show. I can't remember her name right now. I want to Catherine Hahn, I think. But anyway, Wanda looks at Vision. This is all close up. She's like, Vision, help him. He gets down, reaches in, and literally pulls the food through his body. It's to stop the obstruction of his windpipe. And the second the guy's back up on his feet, it's like life goes back to normal. It's like, I'm very impressed with you, Vision. We'll be talking about that raise and promotion on Monday. And they move on from there. And so the show ends, and it has an end credit. It has a WandaVision end credit within the show WandaVision. And as it pulls back, we now see that somebody is sitting at like a control panel watching this show. And then we cut to end of the episode. So they start laying out some stuff. I mean, it is weird, but, and it doesn't really give a lot away, other than that we know it's kind of that thing that we've seen in probably a dozen other movies and TV shows, where somebody just wakes up in this environment and they are integrated into the environment, although they have no memory of how they got there beyond that day. Now, they haven't said that in the series, but that is what everything that they kind of led into thus far has been all about. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't, it's all of those things. Episode 2 is simply another fantasy episode, although there is more hints at something else existing around them. This episode is, I'm going to call it For the Children, because they used that thing a couple of times. Wanda is participating with the other housewives of the neighborhood, and she's wanting to make a good impression. Vision is wanting to hang out with the guys and learn about what they're going to do with the security of the neighborhood, like their version of the Neighborhood Watch program. Of course, here we go. The comedy ensues again. Somebody offers Vision a stick of gum. Vision says, "Oh, sure." He takes the gum. The guy slaps him on the back because something funny was done. Like Vision says something ridiculous, and the gum goes down into his stomach. And the illustration is that the gum has begun to gum up the works within his body, hence making him act and behave like he's drunk, because everything's kind of goofing off in his system. And I forgot to mention that earlier in the program that they are preparing for the, wait for it, magic show at the end of end of the episode. That's what they're supposed to do. Vision and Wanda. They're going to perform this incredible magic show, and they're supposed to win over everybody. Wanda, and on the other hand, while this is going on, and I'm a little bit out of sequence, so just bear with me. While this is going on, Wanda is getting ready for, like I said, the meeting with the housewives, and she meets like the Queen Bee housewife. I can't remember her name either. but she clearly is the one that's in charge, and they all kind of fall in line of what she says. But one of the things that kind of breaks the reality, if you will, that Wanda is living is that she finds a red helicopter, not a real helicopter, but like a toy helicopter in her bushes in the yard. The reason it breaks the reality is because that in this black and white universe is red. It is the one thing in this universe that has some color to it. And it is, I guess we're led to believe that she can actually see this, and she's wondering what the hell's going on. It's almost like Pleasantville, if anybody's seen that movie before. It's like the entirety of the world is black and white, but then all of a sudden something drops a hint of color in there, and then it's just kind of freaking you out. But she throws it away when her neighbor throws it back in the bushes. At least when her neighbor comes, and she goes on, and they haul off into what I was just talking about earlier. At the meeting between the housewives, when it comes down to just Wanda and I'll call her the Queen Bee, she gets in Wanda's face and like, I know something about you and your husband. I don't, I don't trust you and this, that, and the other. And as she's kind of grilling Wanda, getting in her face, the radio starts acting up. Starts playing this stuff. Like changing channels on his own real quick and static, and like somebody was talking to Wanda through the radio speaker. And when that happens, the Queen Bee breaks the glass that she's holding in her hand, and now you see a second spot of color in the show is that is blood. Wanda helps her clean up, and she goes, the Queen Bee runs off and does her thing. So we fast forward now to the end of the show, where it's the magic show. We've got to remember the Gum is still in Vision's system, so he's not functioning at full capacity, which is weird within this universe because as far as I had always known, Vision wasn't a robot. But I know it works within the confines of the show. So now he's doing all this stuff and wanting to do these magic tricks, but rather than do the magic tricks that they have planned on, he's actually using his powers. Whereas Wanda is now trying to use her powers to explain away to the crowd how he's able to do these things. So for example, Vision decides to float up as a trick, like, look at me, I'm flying. And then Wanda makes a rope and a pulley system appear out of nowhere. So they're like, okay, I see how he's doing that. It's the rope. So every time he does something like that, she does something to help explain it off. Up until they get down to the last trick that they had kind of set up earlier in the show, which was the Cabinet of Mystery, where Wanda was supposed to get in it, but Vision, being drunk, we're going to call him that, forgot to put her in there. So she's still standing on the outside, and he's like, oh, yeah. And then the crowd starts chanting, what's in the box? What's in the box? Wanda uses her power. Boom. She poofs her new friend who she met at the Housewives meeting into the box. And she's like, later on, of course, she's like, 1 minute I was in the back, and next thing I know is I was in this cubby hole. How'd you do that? So anyway, they get through that. Wanda, after they, get through the magic show, realizes or scans his body, sees that there's gum in there, and magically pulls it out. And of course, it is through magic, and then he's back to normal. Now they feel like they've messed up the show, and they're trying to sneak away. And then, and again, classic sitcom fashion, the screw up turns into the best thing that they ever said, oh man, we never knew that y'all two were funny. This is the greatest comedy bit that we've seen. So, they give them an award for the best inaugural comedy thing that's happened. And all is right with the world. They go back home. We end the episode that Wanda and Vision are talking on the couch, and they're doing the for the children thing, and oh, this is great, and they're reconciling, I guess, the evening, and then all of a sudden we see there's a bump on Wanda's stomach. There's a baby bump. She stands up and is like, "Is this real?" And of course, Vision's like, "Yes, it is." They hear something on the outside. Now that was the other thing. I forgot to mention that there was the kind of noise that happened earlier in the episode, so that kind of sets this up. So we see now that Wanda is pregnant. They hear this noise. They decide to go out and investigate. Streets are empty on there. Nobody's out there walking around. It's dark. It's the evening. But what they do see is they see a manhole cover being moved. And from that manhole cover, somebody in a beekeeper's outfit, surrounded by bees, comes out, takes a look at both of them. The second he turns and looks towards them, Wanda's like, no. And we see the tape, and I'm going to call it the tape because that's the effect that they use, rewound back up to the moment of, is this real? And instead of now hearing the noise, she is kissed by Vision, and he assumes color in his face, and the whole room begins to get color and transform into, I guess, the next phase of what WandaVision is. So I expect in episode 3 for them to do something along the lines of WandaVision now in color. That was one of those things that took place back in the 60s. And for those of you that didn't understand, when they started shouting out now in color, because you got to remember, everybody did not have a color TV set, so they needed to be told whether the show is in color or not, because if you watch it on the black and white and the show is broadcast in color, you would not know. Idea being, it would incentivize you to go buy this thing in color, to buy a color TV so you can watch it like you're supposed to. Anyhow, so now we've seen two or three things here that have shown that there's something amiss in Wanda's universe. And of course, we got the play on words with WandaVision. Of course, it's both of their names, but WandaVision is literally that within the context of this universe. It is a show through Wanda's vision of sorts. Like somehow or another, because it hasn't been explained yet, and we know it hasn't been explained yet, but somehow or another, they are inside of some sort of television program, which seemingly she controls, even though she doesn't know how or why or whatever the case would be. Now, keep in mind, that part is just a guess. I have, take that with a grain of salt. This is, yes, I gave a bunch of spoilers up there, but this part is just my interpretation of what's going on. I have no inside knowledge, and I got nothing to base this on, so, take it as you will. And I also will say this, even though I'm a, big comic book collector, I never bought a bunch of the WandaVision comic books. They had a 4-issue miniseries, I want to say back in the late 80s, early 90s, where they established the relationship further between Vision and Wanda. And if I remember in that series, that was when she was pregnant. She had her twins at that time. And it wasn't until the West Coast Avengers issues where we kind of established that they were just kind of manifested or what because of what Wanda wanted. So again, all of that in consideration, take what I'm saying. This is just how I envisioned what's going on here. Without knowing how they got to this point, I am going to assume that Wanda's tragedy of losing Vision in Avengers Endgame Because was it Endgame? No, Infinity War. He died in Infinity War. That the tragedy of her losing him, and as we saw, she was like, "You took everything from me." When she's talked to Thanos, or talked to. I use that lightly, but when she confronted Thanos, I think that she is living her fantasy life as best that she can. I don't know if she's locked herself into this thing or she just created her own reality. If you're a comic book reader, we know that she does have the ability to do these things. But whether or not she has created this on her own or is she trapped by someone else, because there lies the other thing. At the end, we saw somebody watching what she was living on a TV screen. And that wasn't in black and white when the camera panned out. In fact, it looked as polished and slick and as modern as anything else. But her ability to rewind this incident that took place at the end of episode 2 to accommodate something that she wanted, opposed to what she was actually living, or and I use air quotes around living in that case, means that she has some level of control over this reality that she's in. That is the best way that I can see that. Again, if they're going to go through the concept of what she was in the comic opposed to what she is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that gives them a lot of leeway. Wanda Maximoff had a lot of power in those comics. I mean, enough to alter basically the world. So who's to say that she is not capable of doing that in the cinematic universe? I know that there have been minor differences and whatnot. And I will say this, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, nothing like that, but I had a similar concept that was shot in a short film some years ago. And that's what I'm basing this on, actually, is that the concept of the woman who had went through such a tragedy that rather than deal with the reality of the situation, I'm just, I'm going to kind of launch myself into my own world. Now, the only difference between what I wrote and what I'm seeing here is that Maz was, the reality in the lady's head, opposed to having some superpowers that would have caused it to change. But then again, we're only on episode 2, so I don't know if this is in her head or not. I don't know if she actually altered reality. I don't know if she's hooked up to a virtual machine. I don't know if she's in an alternate universe. I don't know any of this stuff. So, but the one thing that I do guess is that she has some level of control, that this is the ideal image of what she wanted. She wanted a life with the Vision. She probably wanted children with the Vision. She wanted to just be normal with the Vision. But I don't know how that is being accomplished, and I guess we will not know until the rest of these episodes unleash or release one after the other. So that's it, man. That is the recap that I have for WandaVision. And if you are a fan of fantasy TV, then I would suggest, if that entertains you, go back and watch some real fantasy TV. Go back and watch Bewitched, or you can listen to the review that I had for Bewitched episode 1 and find out how exactly Samantha Stevens got into the situation that she's in. Kind of reminiscent of what Wanda is going through right now, or Wanda and Vision, I guess. Like I said at the beginning of this thing, it is a Marvel production with Marvel characters in a fantasy sitcom package. That is the best way that you could describe this. So, tell me what you think. If you watch the show, did you like it? Where you think it's going? I love to hear the comments. I love to see the comments. Just leave them below. And then, again, if you like it, give it a thumbs up or subscribe. And if you are a fan of pro wrestling, specifically women's wrestling, then you will want to go to my other channel, the Women's Pro Wrestling Network, and like and subscribe there. There's lots of stuff. Been doing that one since 2013. So you got a lot of content there to kind of peruse through. And if not that, you can always go to the WPNWrestling.com site, which runs all our stuff 24 hours a day. So that's it, folks. I am out of here. I appreciate you taking the time and effort to listen to this review. This is Mr. Green. You've been listening to the Movies and Stuff podcast and the review of WandaVision. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will catch you on the next go round.